Hi friends, today we're making this adorable macrame gnome Christmas ornament. So let's get started. To start off, we're going to be working off of this really small 1-inch wooden ring. I found mine at the dollar store, but I'm sure you can find it online as well. Now I'm going to make my little gnome guy have a green hat. This is actually mint color and I purchased this rope off of Amazon. I'll leave the links for everything I can in the description box for you. Anyways, you want to fold your first green cord in half to find the center, and you're going to attach it onto your wooden ring using a lark's head knot, but don't cinch it all the way up tight because we're going to grab our second strand of rope and thread that right through the loop of our lark's head knot, and then you can go ahead and cinch it up tight. And then we're going to tie a square knot using the 2 outside cords. To tie a square knot, you want to make a loop on your left, and then with the right cord, you want to place that over top of the tail, behind the 2 center cords, and then up through the loop of your left. And then cinch it all the way up to the top. Now this is only half of our square knot, so to complete the other half, what you want to do is repeat the same thing but to the opposite side. So this time our loop is on our right, and then we're going to wrap our left cord behind and through that loop. Cinch it up to the top, and that is how you tie a square knot. Now for our second row, we need to increase our amount of cords. So to do that, grab another strand of green cord, fold it in half to find the center, and then place the center right behind the first 2 sets of 2 cords. And now what we're going to do is tie another square knot. So it's just the same process of how we tied our first square knot, only our cord that we're tying our knot with is not attached to our work yet. If it helps, you can always pin down your working cord onto your board, but I think you can manage. Okay, once you've tied your knot, you can go ahead and slide it all the way up to the base of your first knot. Now we need to do the same thing but to the next 2 cords. So grab an additional cord, fold it in half, and then go ahead and tie your floating square knot. Now this is a beginner-friendly macrame Christmas ornament, but if you do find that I'm going too fast for you, you can go ahead and adjust the speed of this video by tapping the 3 dots on the top right corner. And if you need further instructions on how to tie your knots, feel free to check out my knot tutorial playlist. Alright, so slide your knot all the way up to the top, and now what we're going to do is we're going to alternate our square knots. So to do this, you want to leave out the first 2 and the last 2 cords on this row. We're going to ignore those, and then with the 4 center cords, we're going to tie another square knot. So the purpose of alternating our square knots is, first of all, it looks nice, but second of all, it joins our 2 previous knots together. That way that there isn't really any big, huge gaps, and it kind of turns into more of a tapestry. Alrighty, so for your 4th row, you want to take those 2 cords that you left out and bring those back down. Divide your work in half, and we're going to tie another 2 square knots for this row. Now when you tie this square knot, you want to make sure that it sits right below the very last knot, not the one that was in our 2nd row. So as you can see, there's a little bit of a gap right here on the side, and there will also be a gap on the other side as well, and that's because we had left those 2 cords out on the previous row. So don't worry about those. That is what it's supposed to look like when you alternate, and you want to really make sure that your next square knot sits right below your last square knot. Gosh, I hope that makes sense. What I'm trying to say is you want your knots in rows, you don't want them angled sideways. Alrighty, so for our next row, we're going to increase on the first and last 2 cords, and then the 4 middle cords is just going to be a regular square knot. So I have this old friend from high school, actually elementary school as well. I grew up with her. She's part Swedish, and she says that she doesn't call these Christmas gnomes. What she calls them are tomtes. I probably totally mispronounced that, but let me know in the comments. Are these Christmas gnomes to you, or do you call them tomtes? Alright, so moving along. For our sixth row, for our first two and last two cords, we're going to increase by attaching a separate cord. And then for the 8 cords in the middle, we're going to tie 2 square knots. Alright, so for this portion, it could get a little confusing. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove the first 2 and the last 2 cords. And then with the next 4 cords, we're going to tie a square knot. So nothing new so far here, but we're going to work on the left-hand side first and then the right-hand side. We want his little toque or beanie. I'm Canadian, so I say toque. We want it kind of curved shape to make up for room for his big nose. So bring down the first 2 cords on your left-hand side and we're going to tie another square knot with the next 4 cords. Okay, so that is the left-hand side done. Now we're going to repeat the same thing to the right-hand side. So ignore the last 2 cords here on the right, and then with the next 4 cords next to it, we're going to tie a square knot. And of course, grab those last 2 cords, bring them down, and tie your final square knot on this row. So when you're done, it should look like a capital A or an upside down Y. I'm going to unpin it from my board and just kind of adjust and move it up to make room for the bottom of his hat. Or toque. Okay, so this is probably the most difficult part of this whole thing. So what you want to do is grab the 2 center cords right in the very middle, and you're going to cross them over. The cord that was formerly on the right is now on your left and will be the left-hand filler cord, and vice versa for the other side. So now we're going to tie a row of double half hitch knots. Hold your filler cord taut on the left-hand side, and with the right-hand side, you're going to make a loop and loop your cord around and through that loop, and you're going to repeat it twice. That is how you tie a double half hitch knot. So I'm going to go ahead and take this cord and flip it up because that is going to be our filler cord on the other side, and I don't want to get it lost. So we're going to carry on tying our double half hitch knots all the way across. So let's go over that one more time. You make a loop, you loop it around and through the loop, and you repeat one more time. Now I know it probably looks easy looking at it, but the double half hitch knot is the knot that a lot of people struggle with. I find the secret to having the most successful double half hitch knot is all in your tension. You want to hold your filler cord, which is the cord on my left-hand side here. You want to hold that taut, and then your other cords that you're tying around it, which are called your working cords, you want to tie those knots around your filler cord, but you don't want to tie them too tight. You just want them to loop around your filler cord. If you tie it too taut, then you could cause your rope to buckle, and then you won't get that line that the double half hitch knots kind of produce. So you just want to be careful of your tension. So as you're tying your last few double half hitch knots, you want to be mindful that you're tying it close to your square knot so it does that swooping around thing. Okay, so bring down that cord that we had flipped up. That is going to be our new filler cord. And we're going to tie double half hitch knots on the right-hand side now. So as you tie these knots, it's going to look mirrored to our left-hand side. And of course, just like the other side, you want to be mindful that you're tying these double half hitch knots right close up against our square knots from our previous rows. And pay close attention to the last 4 cords here because you want it to swoop up, giving us that nice swooped toque look. Alrighty, so that just about completes his hat portion, and as you can see, it has that nice little swoop look. Alright, so before we move on to working on his beard, I find it best to remove the first 3 and the last 3 cords on his toque. And yes, we're going to bust out our scissors for this. So what you want to do is leave about a good, I don't know, about a ½ an inch of length of tail on the first 3 and last 3 cords. Unpin it from your board, flip it around, and get out your hot glue gun. We are going to neatly secure our ends to the back here, and what I like to do is fold it over onto itself, just kind of like you're wrapping a Christmas present. The neater you can do this, the better. And I like to use the side of my hot glue gun just to smooth it all out. Repeat on the other side and let it cool down before flipping it back around. Section out the 2 very middle center cords. These are the cords that we're going to thread through our wooden bead. Now, this is optional, but if you have masking tape, this makes threading the rope through your bead super easy. All you need is a teeny tiny piece, and all you have to do is kind of roll it onto the very ends of your 2 center cords. This will form kind of a point or kind of a makeshift needle to thread through your bead. Now, if you have a yarn tapestry needle, that is also very helpful, or you can do what I usually do and just kind of jam it through and struggle. Once you have your bead on there, move it up and out of the way because now we're going to work on his beard. Okay, so take 2 strands of your white cord and fold it in half to find the center. Place the center on top of your first 2 green cords. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the 2 ends and we're going to thread that up through the middle of your green cords. Now, if you're familiar with weaving, you would know that this is called a raya knot. Except for my pattern, this raya knot is actually upside down. So take those 2 ends and pull it all the way up to the top, right underneath where we tied our double half-hitch knots. Grab another 2 sets of white cords and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to place it right on top of our green cord and then loop it through and slide it all the way up to the top. And repeat all the way across. Next, we're going to grab our longer strand of white cord. We're going to fold it in half to find the center and then place that center right in the middle between his beard. Now, to make this easier on myself, I'm going to go ahead and tie a temporary overhand knot right on the left-hand side, just so that I can tack it down onto my board. We're going to untie this knot later, so don't tie it too tight. Okay, so this white cord is now going to be our filler cord, and what we're going to do is tie double half-hitch knots around this cord right underneath our raya knots. You want to tie this row of double half-hitch knots really close, tight up against our raya knots so that our raya knots don't slip out. I'm sure nobody here wants a shedding beard. Now, with this row of double half-hitch knots, you actually have to pay close attention to because there's going to be a trick in the middle here. So what we're doing here is we're going to tie double half-hitch knots with the first 4 green cords here. And then once you get to the center, that's when we have to incorporate our wooden bead and create the cutest little lips on our little gnome guy. That is my favorite part of this entire project, is those little lips. Okay, so bring down your 2 center cords with the wooden bead and remove that masking tape at the end if you had done so. And what you need to do is tie another double half-hitch knot, but with one of those cords from your wooden bead. And that's okay if this knot kind of curves around his nose here. Now don't attach the next cord just yet, move that out of the way, and grab our final small strand of white cord. Fold it in half to find the center, and we're going to attach it onto our filler cord using a reverse lark's head knot. For a reverse lark's head knot, you want to place your center loop underneath your filler cord, bring it up around, and then thread the tail ends through that loop. Make sure your reverse lark's head knot is right underneath his little nose, and then you can go ahead and grab that second strand and tie the rest of your double half-hitch knots. And just a reminder, as you're tying your double half-hitch knots, you want to make sure that it's right close up tight against your raya knot because you don't want your beard to be shedding. Okay, so we can go ahead and unpin him from our board and remove that temporary knot that we had tied on our filler cord. He should look quite messy at this point. So what we're going to do is we're going to lift up all those green cords, get them out of the way, and then we're going to go ahead and grab our comb and we're going to comb out his fringe. Now I am actually using a dog brush that I had purchased from the dollar store that I use specifically for combing out my macrame pieces. And then I also use a fine tooth comb just so that I can get really close right at the top. Once it's combed out to your liking, you can go ahead and give his beard a nice trim. It's always good to trim just a little bit at a time because you can always trim more, but you can't add it back. Alrighty, so now what we're going to do is we're going to clean up the green cords. So to do that, just like before, you want to give it a good trim and you want to leave about a ½ inch of a tail. Get out your hot glue gun and you're going to fold it upwards. Now, if you're obsessed with these Christmas gnomes, or tomtays like my friend calls them, what you might need is the matching macrame wall hanging. Click the link on the screen now, and I'll see you over there.